It begins with a shocking and disrespectful act. A bully publicly cuts the hair of a black girl, believing she is just another quiet, weak target. Little does she know, this girl is not only strong, but a skilled fighter. As the bully's entitlement and arrogance grow, the protagonist's calm demeanor hides a deep well of rage. The symbolic moment of the cut will set the stage for an unexpected and powerful transformation. The sharp sound of scissors slicing through hair echoed in the crowded school hallway. A group of students stood by, watching, their laughter filling the air. It wasn't the first time she had been humiliated, but today it was different. Today it wasn't just the usual taunts and stares. Today it was the scissors. "You think you're better than everyone else?" A voice spat, followed by the harsh pull of a braid. "Look at you, with your perfect little curls and your attitude. Time to make you look like what you really are." The girl, standing tall, despite the force being used on her hair, remained silent. A bead of sweat trailed down her neck, her pulse steady, her heart unfazed. Her name was Daria, and while the world around her might have seen only the surface, a black girl, quiet, reserved, easy to target, they didn't know her. They didn't know the fire that burned inside her, the fury and the control she had mastered over the years. They didn't know the fighter. A tall, blonde-haired girl named Erica smirked as she held the scissors, cutting a large chunk of Daria's hair and letting it fall to the floor. She had done this before, to other girls. Erica was popular, entitled, and never once considered that anyone might fight back. The students gathered in a circle around them, their eyes wide, some filming on their phones, others murmuring to each other. This was the show they had been waiting for. Daria, however, remained calm, staring straight ahead at the locker in front of her. Her hair was her pride, every curl a part of her heritage, her identity, her strength. But Daria knew deep inside that there were things far more important than hair. It wasn't the first time someone had tried to diminish her. It wasn't the first time someone had tried to strip her of her identity. But what Erica didn't know was that Daria had no intentions of letting this slide. No, this was more than an attack on her appearance. This was an attack on her dignity. And Daria had learned long ago that dignity, once taken, had to be reclaimed. As Erica snickered, holding up the scissors to cut another section of Daria's thick, curly hair, Daria's hand shifted slightly, just enough for the first strike. With lightning speed, Daria grabbed Erica's wrist, twisting it in one fluid motion that caused Erica to gasp in pain, her scissors falling to the ground. The entire circle of students froze. The calm girl, the one they thought they could push around, had just seized control of the moment. "What's the matter, Erica?" Daria's voice was quiet, but the words hit like a ton of bricks. "Scissors too sharp for you to handle." Erica's face turned red, her arrogance quickly fading as she yanked her arm away, but Daria's grip was solid, unwavering. Her eyes locked onto Erica's. "No fear, no hesitation. Don't think you can do whatever you want," Daria continued, her calm voice like the steady pulse of a drum. "You picked the wrong one this time." The bully stumbled back, her face now a mix of confusion and embarrassment. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected Daria to fight back. The crowd watched in stunned silence. A few students murmured to one another, the energy in the hallway shifting from cruel amusement to tension. Daria let go of Erica's wrist, her expression still calm. She didn't need to say much more. The message was clear. Erica opened her mouth to speak, but the words died on her lips. She glanced around at the circle of students, seeing no support. Some had started to record her humiliation, and the whispers were growing louder. "This is just the beginning," Daria said softly, bending to pick up the scissors from the floor. She held them up in front of Erica's face, then let them fall into the trash can nearby. The sound of metal hitting metal rang through the silence. Without another word, Daria turned and walked away, leaving Erica standing in the hallway. Her pride shattered, the onlookers unsure of how to react. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Daria walked across the campus, her footsteps steady. She could feel the eyes on her, the whispers, the curiosity. She wasn't just walking away from a moment of public humiliation, she was walking towards something else. She didn't need to explain herself. She didn't need to tell anyone what had really happened. She knew that those who had witnessed it would understand. Her body, calm and controlled, had just made its point. But Daria also knew that Erica wouldn't be the last to try to break her. This wasn't just about hair. This was about the constant barrage of challenges, the constant demand that she conform to someone else's expectations. It was about the deep-seated racism, the underestimation, the belief that because of the color of her skin, she was somehow inferior, somehow easier to break. It was time to show the world that Daria wasn't anyone's punching bag. Daria's actions in the hallway have stunned the crowd, but the fight is far from over. Erica's public humiliation is just one battle in the larger war against those who underestimate her. Now, with her reputation as a ruthless fighter growing, Daria prepares to take on the system that continues to oppress her. The real battle is about to begin, and Daria is ready to take it to the next level. The aftermath of Daria's confrontation in the hallway spread through the school like wildfire. The moments after she walked away were filled with whispers, murmurs, and unsure glances. By the time the final bell rang and students flooded out of the classrooms, the story had already made its rounds. "Did you see what happened in the hallway?" one student whispered as she passed Daria's locker. "Daria just stopped Erica in her tracks. I can't believe she actually fought back." Another student, her voice tinged with awe, added, "She didn't even flinch. She just took control." Erica was shook. Daria felt the weight of the eyes on her as she walked through the hallways the next day. Some students were openly staring at her, their expressions mixed. Some looked at her with newfound respect, while others, who had always been on the periphery, now saw her as a threat. Word had gotten around about what had happened, but there was one thing no one realized. That this was just the beginning. She had broken something inside Erica, yes, but the cracks were only just starting to form. Now it was time to see how far those cracks would spread. It wasn't just the students who were talking. Teachers had also started to notice. Mrs. Davis, the history teacher, had walked into her first period class that morning, pausing when she saw Daria's name on the attendance sheet. "Daria, good job yesterday," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. But there was a hint of something else in her tone. A warning. Daria's heart skipped a beat, unsure of what was meant by good job. Mrs. Davis had always been one of the more progressive teachers, someone who usually stayed neutral in the face of school politics. But her comment, although seemingly benign, carried an undertone that Daria couldn't ignore. She gave Mrs. Davis a polite but non-committal smile and nodded. "Thanks," she said, her voice low but calm. The class had resumed, but Daria couldn't shake the feeling that her actions were being watched. It wasn't just about Erica anymore. There were larger forces at play, and Daria was quickly becoming aware of how much the world had changed. For her, after school, Daria met Kayla at the usual spot under the large oak tree near the parking lot. Kayla had been her closest friend since the first day of high school, the one person who knew her better than anyone else. Kayla was smart, confident, and never afraid to speak her mind. She was also one of the few people who truly understood what Daria was going through. "What's going on?" Kayla asked, her brow furrowing as she noticed the tension in Daria's eyes. "You're not acting like yourself. What happened?" Daria looked over at Kayla, her mind racing with thoughts of what had just happened. She had stood up for herself, finally, and now it felt like the whole school was turning its gaze on her. Some of it felt like validation, but there was something else, something darker that she couldn't put her finger on. "People are talking," Daria said, her voice low. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Kayla raised an eyebrow. You stood up for yourself, Daria. That's a good thing. What's the problem? Daria shook her head, her thoughts swirling. I don't know. It's just that it's bigger than just Erica now. People are scared of me. Not just the students, but even the teachers. Mrs. Davis said something this morning, like she was warning me. Kayla's face softened. That's ridiculous. You can't control how other people react. You did what you had to do. If people are scared of you now, that's their problem, not yours. Daria smiled weakly, but the truth of what she had done and what was coming next still lingered in the back of her mind. The next day, things only escalated. As Daria sat down in homeroom, she noticed Erica in the back of the room, her eyes flashing with barely concealed fury. She had seen Daria's display of power, and it hadn't gone unnoticed. Erica had always been the queen bee of the school, the one everyone looked up to, the one who wielded her popularity like a weapon. But now, Daria could see it in her eyes, the shift in power, the rage that came with losing control. Erica didn't say anything as Daria entered the room. She just glared at her, her fists clenched tightly at her sides. Daria met her gaze. Unflinching, but deep down, she could feel the tension mounting. She had stepped into a new world, one where every move would be scrutinized, every action weighed with consequence. After homeroom, as Daria walked to her first class, she heard Erica's voice behind her. You're not gonna get away with this. You know, I'm not done with you. Daria turned to face her, her calm demeanor never faltering. You tried to cut my hair. You tried to humiliate me. You've done this before, Erica, and you'll keep doing it until someone fights back. Erica's eyes narrowed, her voice dripping with venom. You've made a big mistake. This isn't over. Daria didn't respond. She didn't need to. She had already said everything she needed to say. It was clear now that this was about more than just hair. It was about power, control, and the unspoken rules that Erica had relied on to keep people like Daria in their place. Daria knew that the only way to win this battle wasn't through words. It was through action. She had made her move. Now she had to see it through. That afternoon, as Daria walked home, the reality of what was coming hit her. Erica was just the beginning. There were people in this school who would stop at nothing to maintain their power, and they would try to break Daria at every turn. But she wasn't going to back down. The streets felt different now. Every corner, every alley was a reminder of the challenge ahead. Daria wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every person who had ever been silenced by someone like Erica. As she turned the corner to her street, she felt a surge of energy. The fight was just beginning, and this time, she wasn't going to be the one who was pushed around. She was going to take the fight to them. The tension between Daria and Erica is rising, and with it, Daria's resolve is growing stronger. As Erica prepares for her next move, Daria must confront not just the bully, but the system that allows such behavior to thrive. The fight for justice has only just begun, and Daria's strength will be tested in ways she never imagined. Days passed, and Daria continued to walk through the school halls with a quiet determination. She could feel the tension in the air, a constant undercurrent of whispers and curious stares. The events of the previous day had already spread through the school, and now every student seemed to be watching her, waiting for her next move. They didn't know what to expect from her anymore. Erica had been noticeably absent from the halls, but Daria knew that her absence wasn't a retreat. It was a strategy. Erica was planning her next move, and Daria could feel it coming. The school was divided into factions, and the more the divide grew, the more it became clear that this battle was no longer just about Daria and Erica. It was about power, control, and who would ultimately be allowed to dictate the rules. The cafeteria was where the lines were drawn most clearly. As Daria walked in, she immediately noticed the groups that had formed around the room. On one side, the popular crowd gathered, laughing and talking, with Erica's friends among them. On the other, a few quieter groups sat, their eyes often darting toward Daria as she moved to grab her lunch. She had never been the center of attention before, certainly not like this. The silent tension in the room was palpable. Some students avoided her gaze entirely, as if they feared being associated with the troublemaker. Others shot her looks of admiration, as if seeing her as a symbol of rebellion, but no one dared speak to her directly, at least not yet. It was in these quiet moments that Daria felt the weight of her decision. She hadn't just taken a stand against Erica. She had inadvertently challenged the social order of the school, a system that had existed for years. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that Erica was only a symptom of the larger problem. It wasn't just one bully. It was a culture of silence, of allowing those in power to intimidate the weaker and the quieter. But Daria wasn't going to stay silent anymore. That afternoon, Daria sat in the library, her eyes focused on the pages of her book, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about the next steps in her plan. She couldn't keep waiting for Erica to make the first move. It was time for her to take control. The problem wasn't just Erica. It was the system that allowed people like Erica to get away with everything. It was time for a change. As she stared out the window, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Kayla's name flashed across the screen. Daria picked it up immediately. "Hey, Kayla," Daria said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in her chest. "I've been hearing things," Kayla said, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. "Word is, Erica's planning something big. She's trying to rally the popular crowd to turn the school against you. She's using the whole troublemaker narrative. No, making it seem like you're the one causing all this drama." Daria's grip on the phone tightened, her jaw clenched. "Of course she is. She's trying to turn the whole school against me." Kayla paused for a moment, then spoke again. "I don't think it's going to work. Not this time. A lot of people are starting to see through her. You've got people on your side, Daria. There are more of us than you realize." Daria felt a flicker of hope rise in her chest. For the first time, she wasn't alone in this fight. "Who?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity. "There's a group, a few people who've had enough of the way things have been. They've been watching, waiting for someone to stand up, and now they're ready. We're all in this together." Daria's heart swelled. She hadn't realized how much support she had until now. "I thought I was alone in this." "You're never alone," Kayla said firmly. "You've made a difference, and it's only just beginning." The next day, Daria arrived at school to find something strange. The usual crowds of students gathered in the hallways, talking in hushed tones. But today, there was a new energy in the air. A subtle shift had occurred, one that Daria couldn't quite put her finger on, but she could feel it. As she walked toward her locker, she noticed something new. Several students who had always avoided her or simply didn't care, were now looking her way, giving her nods of approval. A quiet smile from a girl in the back of the hall. A brief, knowing glance from a group of boys near the lockers. They didn't speak, but the message was clear. Something had changed. The silent resistance was growing. In the cafeteria that day, things were different. A few students had started to sit with Daria, silently choosing to stand by her. No words were exchanged, but the message was powerful. Even Erica's friends were noticing the shift, their eyes scanning the room uneasily, unsure of how to react. But as the day wore on, Daria felt the tension rising again. As she walked into her last class of the day, she saw Erica at the back of the room, whispering to a group of students. Her eyes met Daria's, and for the first time Daria saw something different in Erica's gaze. Fear. Erica wasn't the one in control anymore. After school, Daria met with Kayla again. This time, they were joined by a few others, the ones who had quietly supported her in the background, watching the events unfold. The small group gathered at their usual spot under the oak tree, each of them filled with a quiet determination. "We're ready," Kayla said, her voice serious. "We've got support, Daria. This isn't just about one fight anymore. This is about showing everyone that things can change." Daria took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what she was about to do. "I never thought it would come to this," she said, her voice quiet but strong. "But I'm not backing down. I'm not going to let Erica or anyone else control this school anymore." One of the other students, a tall girl named Jasmine, spoke up. "We're with you, Daria, every step of the way. We've seen enough." The group nodded in agreement, their faces filled with resolve. It wasn't just about Daria anymore. It was about all of them, about standing up against a system that had allowed people like Erica to thrive, and about showing that resistance didn't have to be loud, it didn't have to be flashy. Sometimes it was quiet, it was steady, and in the end, it was unstoppable. That evening, as Daria walked home, she felt a shift in the air. The world around her hadn't changed, but she had. She was no longer the quiet, passive girl who let things slide. She was someone who fought for what was right, and now she had allies. She had people who believed in her, who were willing to stand with her. The system was changing piece by piece. The tide was turning, and Daria was ready for whatever came next. Daria's actions have started to gain traction, but Erica is not going to give up easily. With the support of her friends and allies growing, Daria prepares for the next confrontation. But as the battle intensifies, she must decide how far she's willing to go to change the system, and how much she's willing to sacrifice to make it happen. The days following Daria's quiet resistance began to feel like a countdown to something inevitable. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Daria could feel it in the hallways, in the classrooms, and even in the cafeteria. What had started as a small act of defiance had grown into something bigger than she had imagined. She had gained allies, people who had once been too afraid to speak out against the system. But Erica, as expected, wasn't going down without a fight. That afternoon, as Daria walked to her locker, she noticed the familiar group of Erica's friends standing nearby. They were whispering among themselves, their eyes darting in her direction. Daria knew the next move was coming. Erica wouldn't let her get away with this. She never did. Erica herself appeared a few moments later, flanked by two of her most loyal followers. The arrogance was back in full force, her head held high as she approached Daria's locker. But there was something in her eyes that Daria hadn't seen before, desperation. "You think you've won, don't you?" Erica's voice dripped with venom as she stepped closer to Daria, her gaze narrowing. "You think you're some kind of hero, but you're nothing. You're just a little girl trying to play with the big leagues." Daria met her gaze, her eyes unwavering. She had been expecting this, the challenge, the retaliation. Erica had never taken kindly to being shown up, and now she was lashing out. But Daria wasn't afraid. "I'm not the one who's been playing games, Erica," Daria said quietly, her voice calm and steady. "You're the one who's been using fear and control to get what you want, and it's not working anymore." Erica's jaw clenched, but she didn't back down. "You really think you can just walk around here like you're some kind of hero? You're nothing but trouble. And now you're going to pay for it." Daria stood her ground. She didn't need to speak more words to Erica. Actions, as they both knew, spoke louder than anything. She wasn't afraid of Erica's threats. She was afraid of what Erica might do next, and what that might mean for everyone who had quietly supported her. The next day, Daria entered the cafeteria to find it more tense than ever. The students were sitting in their usual groups, but there was an undercurrent of nervousness in the air. Daria's heart sank as she noticed that Erica and her followers had gathered at one of the long tables, whispering among themselves and casting occasional furtive glances in her direction. Then Daria saw it. One of Erica's friends, Sarah, stood up and walked over to Daria. She was carrying something in her hand, and her face was set in an expression of defiance. Daria didn't need to ask. She could feel the anger bubbling inside her, knowing that Erica and her followers had planned something. The question was, what? Sarah reached Daria's table and slammed a crumpled piece of paper down in front of her. The room went quiet. Daria glanced at the paper, her eyes narrowing. It was a photocopy of an old report card, one from several years ago. Daria's name was printed at the top, but the grade she had received was the last thing on her mind. Her name was circled in red, and beneath it a single note had been scrawled. Uncooperative, defiant, needs to know her place. It wasn't just the note that hit her hard. It was the realization that this was no coincidence. Erica and her friends had gotten a hold of her records, her personal files, and used them to try and break her. "Are you going to cry now?" Sarah sneered, crossing her arms. "Is this what you wanted, Daria? A fight you can't win?" Daria's fingers clenched around the paper, and for a moment her vision blurred. The old feelings rushed back. The shame, the sense of being smaller than she really was, the feeling of being less than. She had always been told she was defiant, difficult to handle, but no more. She looked up at Sarah and then across the room at Erica, whose eyes burned with a mix of anger and triumph. She was trying to break Daria, to prove that she was still in control, but this wasn't a defeat, it was a challenge, one Daria was ready to meet head-on. "I don't need your approval, Erica," Daria said, her voice cool and steady. "And I don't need your pathetic attempt to embarrass me. It's not going to work." Erica's face contorted with rage, and she stormed over, slamming her hands on the table in front of Daria. "You think you've won? You think you've done something? You've just started a war you can't win." Daria stood up slowly, her eyes locked on Erica's. "Maybe you should stop trying to control everything, because the more you try to break me, the stronger I get." Erica's expression faltered for a brief moment. The words, though quiet, had power behind them. Daria knew that, and it was exactly what Erica wasn't expecting. But Erica quickly regained her composure, forcing a mocking smile. "You're nothing. You'll always be beneath me, no matter how much you fight." Daria didn't say another word. She turned and walked away, leaving the cafeteria behind her. She didn't need to prove anything to Erica. The damage had already been done, and now the entire school had witnessed it. After school, Daria met Kayla at their usual spot under the oak tree. The fight had taken a new turn, and Daria knew she needed to be ready for whatever was coming next. She couldn't afford to hesitate now. "You good?" Kayla asked, her voice gentle but concerned. Daria sighed, leaning against the tree. "I'm fine, but Erica's not done with me yet. She's pulling out all the stops now." Kayla nodded. "It's gonna get worse before it gets better, but you've got people on your side now, Daria. We're not going to let her win." Daria smiled faintly. "I know, and I'm not backing down. Not now. Not ever." The next day, Daria returned to school with renewed strength. Erica's attacks were escalating, but Daria wasn't afraid anymore. This wasn't just about one girl. It was about something much bigger. A fight against a system that had allowed people like Erica to thrive for far too long. The students in the hallways noticed something different about Daria that day. She wasn't the quiet, passive girl they had known before. There was a new energy in her, a quiet confidence that seemed to command respect. Daria was no longer playing by anyone else's rules. She was rewriting the script. As Daria walked through the halls, she didn't notice the stares. She didn't hear the whispers. She knew that this was only the beginning. But now she was ready for whatever came next. Erica might have thought she had the upper hand, but Daria was stronger than ever, and this fight was far from over. Daria has stood her ground against Erica, but the battle is far from finished. As the tensions escalate and the school divides even further, Daria realizes that this fight will require more than just physical strength. It will require her to challenge the very system that allows bullies to thrive. The stakes have never been higher, and Daria is ready to take the fight all the way. Full Chapter 5. The days after the confrontation with Erica were filled with whispers, uneasy glances, and an undeniable shift in the school's atmosphere. Word of the altercation had spread faster than wildfire, and soon everyone seemed to have an opinion. Some students admired Daria for her courage, others were too intimidated to speak up, and some, like Erica's loyal followers, were plotting their revenge. Daria could feel the weight of the attention wherever she went. The whispers never stopped. They followed her like a shadow, clinging to her every move. But today, as she walked through the halls to her first class, the stairs felt different. It wasn't just about Erica anymore. It was about the school, about a system that had allowed her and people like her to flourish unchecked. Her hands were steady, her heart calm, but there was a new fire in her chest. This fight wasn't just about one girl trying to bully another. It was about a system that allowed this behavior to continue unchecked. Erica was just a symptom of the deeper systemic issues that were at play. Daria knew that now more than ever, and she was ready to take on the system. By lunchtime, Daria had already noticed that the cafeteria was divided. The usual cliques were still there, but now there was a palpable sense of tension in the air. Students who had previously ignored her were now giving her strange looks, while others had started to sit in the back corner, quietly whispering their support. The cafeteria, once just a place to eat and chat, had turned into a battleground. Daria sat alone as usual, but this time she didn't mind. She had already prepared herself for the inevitable isolation that would come with standing up to someone like Erica. It wasn't easy, and she could feel it in her bones. The fear, the doubt, the anxiety, they were all there. But she had already made her decision. She wouldn't back down. Suddenly the door to the cafeteria opened and in walked Erica, flanked by her usual entourage. The familiar, smug expression was there, but today there was something else behind it, something darker, more calculating. Erica scanned the room, her eyes landing on Daria, sitting alone. She made her way toward Daria's table, her steps slow and deliberate, as if she were savoring the moment. "Look at you," Erica said, her voice dripping with mockery. "Sitting here, all alone. Do you really think you've won? Do you think anyone cares about your little rebellion?" Daria didn't flinch. She had expected this. The next move in Erica's game was already playing out before her eyes. She took a deep breath, her voice calm, even as the tension in the air thickened. "I'm not playing your game, Erica," Daria said evenly. "I'm not here for your approval. I'm not here to please anyone. I'm here because I'm done being silent." Erica's lips curled into a sneer. "Done being silent? Please, you're just trying to make yourself the center of attention. But you don't know the first thing about power. You never will." Daria stood up slowly, facing Erica. The room had grown quiet, every eye watching the exchange. "I know exactly what power is," Daria replied, her voice steady and strong. "It's the ability to control people like you, to make them believe they can push others around without consequence. And you've been doing that for too long." For a moment, there was silence between them. Erica's eyes flickered with something, anger, frustration, maybe even fear, before she quickly masked it with a dismissive laugh. "You really think you've won, huh? You think you've changed anything? Newsflash, sweetheart. No one. Who cares?" Daria met her gaze, not backing down for a second. "I think the difference is that I care, and so do a lot of other people. You're just too blind to see it." Erica's expression darkened. "You'll regret this, Daria. This isn't over. You've made a real mess of everything, and you'll pay for it." With that, Erica turned on her heel, her followers trailing behind her. The tension lingered in the air, but the moment was over. Daria didn't need to say anything more. She had stood her ground, and that was enough. As Erica and her entourage walked away, Daria could feel a shift in the atmosphere. Some students who had been sitting on the sidelines watching the exchange now began to speak up. Quiet whispers of support began to circulate through the cafeteria. The ripple effect had begun. After school, Daria walked home with Kayla, both of them lost in thought. Kayla, ever the optimist, tried to lighten the mood. "You did good in there." Erica was practically seething. Daria smiled faintly, but didn't respond immediately. Her mind was elsewhere on the larger picture. "This isn't just about me and Erica anymore, Kayla. It's about all of us. The system that lets people like her get away with this. The teachers who turn a blind eye. The students who are too afraid to speak up." Kayla nodded, her expression serious. "I get it, and I know you're right. But you're not alone in this, Daria. You've got more people backing you than you realize. We've got to keep pushing." Daria looked at Kayla, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I didn't know I had this much support. It's overwhelming. But I'm not stopping. I can't stop." The following days were a blur of quiet resistance. Word of Daria's stand against Erica had spread further, and the school began to split into two distinct sides. On one side, there were those who rallied behind Daria, tired of the bullying, tired of the way Erica and her clique controlled everything. On the other, there were those who still clung to the old ways, those who followed Erica's lead, willing to overlook her toxic behavior just to stay in the popular crowd. Daria walked through the halls with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that she had the support of a growing number of students, but she also knew that Erica wasn't finished yet. The fight was far from over. It wasn't just a battle for Daria anymore. It was a battle for everyone who had been silenced, for everyone who had been too afraid to speak out. And Daria was going to make sure they had a voice. Later that afternoon, Daria and Kayla met with a few others in the park. They had formed a small group of allies, students who were ready to stand up to Erica and the system that had allowed her to thrive. It was a quiet group, but Daria could see the fire in their eyes. They were ready for the fight ahead. "We're not just standing up for ourselves," Daria said, looking around at the group. "We're standing up for everyone who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong, for every person who's been silenced, who's been pushed around. We're going to take this as far as it has to go." One of the students, a shy boy named Isaac, spoke up. "But what about the teachers? They've been letting Erica get away with this for years." Daria's gaze hardened. "That's the next step. We take this to the teachers, to the administration. If they want to keep protecting Erica, they'll have to answer for it. This isn't just about fighting Erica anymore. It's about fighting the system." The group nodded in agreement. It wasn't just a battle against one bully. It was about exposing the system of oppression that allowed people like Erica to thrive. And Daria was ready to fight it with everything she had. Daria's rebellion has gained momentum, but the fight is far from over. With Erica's power still intact and the system that supports her not yet ready to crumble, Daria prepares for the next phase of the battle. Will she be able to expose the true depth of the system's corruption, or will Erica and her allies succeed in silencing her once again? Full Chapter 6. The days felt like a blur as Daria prepared for what was coming. Next, after her confrontation with Erica and the rising tension in the school, the battle lines were more clearly drawn than ever before. Erica's supporters were vocal, and the influence she had within the school system was undeniable. But Daria wasn't backing down. She couldn't afford to. The hallway was quieter than usual that morning. The whispers had died down, but the weight of the situation still hung heavily in the air. Every student Daria passed seemed to look away, unsure of what side to choose. They had seen the altercation in the cafeteria, but most were too afraid to speak up. It wasn't just about Daria and Erica anymore. It was about the system, about the way things had always been. The bell rang, signaling the start of the first class. Daria gathered her things, mentally preparing herself for the day ahead. She had already planned her next move. It was time to take the fight to the teachers, to the administration. They were the ones who had allowed Erica's behavior to continue, unchecked. If they wanted to protect her, they would have to answer for it. The first step was to gather evidence. Daria had already spoken to a few students who had witnessed Erica's bullying firsthand. She'd made sure to get their statements. Their accounts of what had been happening in the school for years. It wasn't just about what happened between her and Erica. It was about the larger pattern of systemic racism and bullying that had been allowed to thrive, unchecked. Kayla had been instrumental in helping her put everything together. The two of them spent hours gathering information, recordings of past incidents, witness statements, even anonymous tips from students who didn't want to be involved but knew what had been going on. It was a lot to process, but Daria had never been one to back down from a challenge. Now it was time to take it to the administration. The meeting was scheduled for 3:30 p.m., just after the last bell of the day. Daria walked into the principal's office with Kayla by her side. The walls were lined with certificates, trophies, and photos of the school's achievements, a reminder of the pride the administration had in its institution. But today, the trophies seemed irrelevant. Today, Daria was here to challenge the very system that had allowed the school to operate with such disregard for the students who didn't fit its narrow mold. The principal, Mr. Walters, sat behind his desk, his fingers steepled in front of him. He looked calm, collected, but Daria could see the tension in his eyes. He knew why they were here. This wasn't just another routine meeting. This was a reckoning. Daria, Kayla, Mr. Walters said, his voice steady but carrying an edge. "What can I do for you today?" Daria stood tall, her heart pounding in her chest, but her voice was calm. "We're here to discuss the ongoing bullying in this school, specifically Erica's behavior and how the administration has allowed it to continue." Kayla's voice joined hers. "We've compiled evidence, witness statements, and recordings of past incidents that demonstrate a pattern of abuse, and we believe that Erica's actions and the school's failure to address them have created a toxic environment." Mr. Walters' eyes flickered over the files they handed him, but he didn't immediately respond. Instead, he looked at the two of them, his expression unreadable. "You're bringing this to my office now. After everything that's happened, you think I didn't know about the tension between you and Erica?" Mr. Walters asked, his voice laced with frustration. "What do you expect me to do, Daria? Do you think I can just suspend or expel Erica over a few arguments and misunderstandings?" Daria clenched her fists at her sides, but kept her voice steady. "It's not just a few arguments. Erica has been bullying me and other students for years, and the administration has done nothing about it. It's not a misunderstanding. It's a pattern of behavior that has gone unchecked. And it's not just about me. It's about every student who's been forced to stay silent." Mr. Walters leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving. "Daria, and what do you think the outcome will be? Do you honestly believe that I can just throw away everything the school stands for because of a few incidents? You're making this bigger than it is." Daria's heart raced as she fought to keep her composure. She had come too far to back down now. "This isn't just about me and Erica," Daria said, her voice low but firm. "This is about a system that's allowed bullying to continue without consequence. This is about every student who's been too afraid to speak out, too afraid to stand up for what's right. This is about the fact that Erica's behavior has been tolerated because of who she is, because of her privilege. And that's not something we can let slide anymore." The room grew silent as Daria's words hung in the air. Mr. Walters shifted in his chair, the calm demeanor he had been wearing beginning to crack. He opened the file in front of him, flipping through the pages with deliberate slowness, as if he were buying time. "This is serious, Daria," he finally said. "If I were to take any action against Erica, it would have consequences. There are a lot of parents, a lot of people who won't be happy with this, and there's no guarantee that the evidence you've presented will be enough to make a real change." "I don't need guarantees," Daria replied. "I need justice. I need change. If you want to protect Erica and the system that enables her, that's on you. But I'm not backing down. Not now. Not ever." Mr. Walters stared at her for a long moment, then glanced over at Kayla, who was standing beside her with a quiet, unwavering resolve. He finally sighed, as if the weight of the situation had finally hit him. "I'll take this into consideration," he said, his voice softening, though there was still a hint of resistance. "But don't think this will be an easy fight. There are a lot of forces at play here. You need to be prepared for what's coming." Daria nodded, her resolve unwavering. "I've been prepared for a long time." After the meeting, as Daria and Kayla walked out of the school, the reality of what had just happened sank in. The meeting with Mr. Walters hadn't gone exactly as they'd hoped, but it had been a start. They had made their case, and now it was up to him to decide whether or not he would take action. But Daria knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about Erica. It was about challenging the entire system that allowed people like her to thrive. And no matter what happened next, she wasn't backing down. Daria's confrontation with the administration has just begun. While she waits for Mr. Walters' decision, Erica's retaliation is already in motion. With the school divided, Daria must navigate the dangers of standing up for what's right. Will the system protect the bully once again, or will Daria's courage force real change? Full Chapter 7. The days after the meeting with Mr. Walters were filled with a simmering unease. Daria could feel the tension in the air, thick and oppressive. It wasn't just Erica who was making things difficult anymore. The whole school was starting to feel the aftershocks of the stand she had taken. The cracks in the system had become more apparent, but so had the resistance. Some teachers continued to turn a blind eye, while others began to voice their concerns. But Erica wasn't going to sit quietly. She had already started her retaliation. It happened in the halls during fifth period. Daria was walking to her next class when she noticed a few of Erica's friends standing by a locker, whispering among themselves. At first, Daria thought nothing of it. She had become used to the subtle acts of hostility Erica and her group were so skilled at. But today was different. As Daria approached, one of Erica's friends, a girl named Megan, stepped into her path. "You think you're a hero, huh?" Megan sneered, blocking Daria's way. "Well, heroes don't last long around here." Daria raised an eyebrow, her posture unshaken. "I'm not trying to be a hero, Megan. I'm just trying to do what's right." Megan scoffed, glancing over her shoulder at the others. "You really think this is over? You made a fool of yourself, and now we're going to make sure you regret it." Before Daria could respond, she noticed a few students start to gather around. This wasn't just a confrontation between her and Megan. It was a spectacle, a show for the students who still followed Erica's lead. They were all waiting to see if Daria would back down. But Daria had made a promise to herself. She wasn't going to let this slip away. "You've been bullying people for years, Megan," Daria said coolly, her voice steady and calm. "And it's time for you to face the consequences." Megan smirked, clearly not intimidated. "You really think you can change everything by standing up to us? You don't belong here. You never will." Before Daria could say anything further, Megan pushed past her roughly, shoving her shoulder hard. It was a small, deliberate act of aggression, meant to provoke. But Daria didn't flinch. She kept walking, her heart hammering, her hands clenched at her sides. She was done with being pushed around. The rest of the day felt like a constant battle. Everywhere she went, the whispers followed her, the eyes tracking her movements. Erica's. Retaliation wasn't just physical anymore, it was psychological. The tension had escalated. It wasn't enough for Erica to humiliate Daria in front of a few students. Now she was trying to turn the entire school against her. In her last class of the day, Daria sat in the back, trying to focus on the lesson, but her mind kept drifting back to the confrontation. The things Megan had said, the way they had tried to make her feel small again, and yet Daria couldn't shake the feeling that this was what she had been waiting for. The fight had been thrust upon her, but now that it was here, she was ready for it. The system that had protected Erica was starting to unravel, and Daria wasn't going to let it stitch itself back together. When the bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, Daria gathered her things slowly. She wasn't rushing anymore. She didn't feel like running away. The fight wasn't over, and she wasn't about to make it easier for them by cowering. As she walked out into the courtyard, Kayla was waiting for her, her arms crossed, her eyes scanning the area. She'd seen what had happened during the day, and she knew what was coming. "How'd it go?" Kayla asked, her voice low but full of concern. Daria let out a breath, her gaze hardening as she looked out at the school. "It's getting worse, Kayla. They're escalating it. They're trying to make me look crazy, make it seem like I'm the one causing trouble." Kayla sighed, stepping closer. "We knew it wasn't going to be easy, but you can't let them get to you. You've already made a huge impact. People are talking, and Erica's starting to lose control." Daria shook her head, feeling the weight of what was happening. "But she's got the system behind her, the teachers, the administration. They all protect her. How long can I keep fighting when the whole school is stacked against me?" Kayla reached out and put a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone, Daria. We've got your back." "We've always got your back." Daria smiled weakly. "I know, but it's not just about us anymore. It's about everyone who's been too afraid to stand up to people like Erica. I can't let her keep doing this." Kayla nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "You're not alone in this, Daria, but we need to make sure we're ready for whatever's coming next." The next day, as Daria walked into school, she could feel it. The whispers had intensified, and the glances were sharper, more pointed. It was like a constant storm in the air, swirling around her every step. The divide between the students who supported her and the ones who followed Erica had grown even wider. As Daria walked to her locker, she was confronted with more than just the usual bullying. Some of Erica's friends had been circulating rumors about her. They had spread lies that she was violent, that she had a history of disrupting the school, that she was out of control. At first, Daria tried to ignore it, but as the day wore on, the rumors began to stick. She overheard a conversation in the hallway between two girls. "Have you heard about Daria? I heard she's threatening people now. She's dangerous." One of the girls snickered. "Yeah, she's probably just mad because she doesn't fit in." Daria kept walking, her face expressionless, but inside she could feel the weight of their words. Erica was using the power of the rumor mill to isolate her, to turn everyone against her. The system wasn't just protecting Erica, it was protecting the status quo. The people who were comfortable with how things had always been, and Daria wasn't comfortable anymore. That afternoon, as she walked home, Daria felt the weight of it all. The tension, the pressure, the fear. But she also felt something else: determination. She had started this fight, and she wasn't going to stop now. The system was rigged. Erica had her influence, her power, but Daria had something Erica didn't: the truth. The truth about the way things were, the way the school had let students like Erica rule with fear. It was time for that truth to come out, loud and clear. Daria's fight against Erica has reached a dangerous new level. The rumors are spreading, and the school is beginning to fracture. With the administration unwilling to take action, Daria realizes she may have to go further, exposing the deeper corruption within the school. But as the pressure builds, she must decide how far she's willing to go to challenge the system and whether she's ready to face the consequences. full. Chapter 8. The hallway felt different as Daria walked toward her locker the next day. It was a subtle change, a shift in the way the air felt, the way the students looked at her. Whispers followed her every step, not of admiration, but of fear, distrust, and something deeper. The divide between those who supported her and those who stood by Erica had deepened, and the tension had reached a point that felt almost unbearable. As she opened her locker, she noticed a folded note tucked inside. Daria's heart sank. She hadn't been expecting anything personal, but something about the note made her pause. Slowly, she unfolded it, her eyes scanning the words. "You're out of your league. Stop now before things get worse. This is your last warning." Daria's jaw clenched, the anger rising in her chest. She had seen enough of these kinds of threats in her life to know when someone was trying to intimidate her. But this note wasn't just from Erica. This was something bigger. Erica was rallying her friends, but someone else, someone with more power, was behind this. She folded the note back up, tucking it in her pocket. She had seen the fear in Erica's eyes when they had last spoken. Now, that fear had turned into something more dangerous. Erica wasn't just trying to break Daria down anymore. She was trying to destroy her. Throughout the rest of the day, Daria felt the growing pressure. The rumors had begun to spiral, and now the whispers weren't just about her being difficult or defiant. Now she was being labeled as violent, unstable, and a threat to the school's well-being. It wasn't just Erica's group anymore. The narrative had expanded, and now even the administration was starting to pay attention. It had become clear that this fight wasn't just about one bully. It was about a system that allowed this kind of behavior to persist. The teachers, the principal, and the other students who had stood by and done nothing had all become part of the problem. They were complicit in maintaining the status quo. Daria wasn't just fighting for her own dignity anymore. She was fighting for the truth to be heard, for the voices of those who had been silenced for so long to finally be given a platform. She wasn't going to back down, no matter the cost. That afternoon, Daria met Kayla at their usual spot under the oak tree. Daria could see the worry in her eyes as Kayla walked up to her, but she could also see the determination. Kayla had been her rock through all of this, and Daria knew she couldn't face what was coming next without her. "I got the note," Daria said quietly, her voice betraying the frustration that had been building inside her. "It's not just Erica anymore. Someone else is behind this." Kayla's face hardened. "You mean they're making it personal? Erica's always been the puppet, but now someone's pulling the strings." Daria nodded, her gaze far away. "Yeah, I don't know who, but it's bigger than just us. This is about power, and they're trying to shut me up." Kayla took a deep breath. "So what do we do now?" Daria looked at her, a sense of clarity settling in her chest. "We expose them. We force them to listen. They want to make me the villain. Fine. But I'm going to make sure the world knows the truth. They won't be able to ignore us." The next day, Daria decided to take the first step. She had gathered everything, the witness statements, the recorded videos, the anonymous tips. She had already sent some of the evidence to a local news outlet that had been known for its coverage of social justice issues. This wasn't just about standing up to Erica anymore. It was about exposing the toxic culture within the school. The way students like Erica were able to bully others with impunity because the system allowed it. Daria knew the risks. She had thought about them over and over. Going public meant the spotlight would be on her, and it would be harder to fight back against the smear campaigns and the backlash that would follow. But the school wasn't going to change unless someone forced it to. And that someone had to be her. That afternoon after school, Daria received a call from the news outlet. The reporter on the other end was eager to hear her side of the story. She had expected questions about the school's administration, about Erica, about the bullying. But when the reporter asked, "How deep does this go? Do you think this is a case of institutionalized racism?" Daria froze. The question struck her deeper than she had expected. This wasn't just about a few bad apples, it was about a systemic issue. Erica was just one example of a much larger pattern, one that Daria had been forced to confront over the past few weeks. Daria's mind raced as she answered, carefully choosing her words. I believe it's about more than just one person. The way Erica's been allowed to act, the way the administration has done nothing to stop her, it's part of a larger system that values power over fairness. And yes, I believe that system is rooted in racial dynamics. There are certain people here who are protected because of who they are, and others like me who are not. There was a pause on the other end of the line. The reporter seemed taken aback by her candidness, but then she spoke again. Are you sure you're ready for the consequences of this? Going public with this will bring a lot of attention, some of it negative. Daria hesitated, then responded, her voice strong and steady. I'm ready. This has gone on long enough. If I don't do something, nothing will change. The following days were a whirlwind. The story was picked up by the news outlet, and within hours it spread across social media. The video clips of Daria's confrontation with Erica went viral, shared by students, parents, and activists alike. But the backlash came quickly too. Students who had once been neutral began to speak out against Daria, accusing her of causing trouble, of disrupting the school's peace. The administration, which had already been under pressure, now found itself in the spotlight. Mr. Walters issued a public statement condemning the disruption and calling for a return to order. But Daria could see right through it. He wasn't defending the students who had been bullied. He was defending the system that had allowed the bullying to continue. One afternoon, just as Daria was walking out of the school, she saw Erica and a few of her friends standing near the entrance. They were waiting for her. You think you've won? Erica sneered as Daria walked closer. You've just made things worse for yourself. You've gone public. You've made a spectacle of yourself. Daria stopped a few feet away from her, her expression unreadable. No. What I've done is shown everyone what you really are. You can't bully me anymore, Erica, and you can't bully anyone else. Erica's face twisted with rage, but Daria didn't flinch. She had already won. It wasn't about this moment, it was about the bigger picture. The truth had been exposed, and no matter how much Erica tried to fight it, it wasn't going away. As the story spreads and the pressure mounts, Daria finds herself at a crossroads. The fight has only just begun, and the consequences of her actions are starting to take shape. But Daria has no intention of backing down. The system may try to silence her, but she's ready to keep fighting for what's right. The real battle is about to begin. Full Chapter 9. The chaos after Daria's story went public was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The school, which had once been a place of routine, had become a battleground, a place where every conversation was tinged with suspicion and every look felt like a judgment. By the second week, the media was all over the story. The local news stations ran segments on the escalating tension at the school, with Daria's confrontation with Erica becoming the focal point. Social media was ablaze with heated debates, with some students rallying behind Daria's courage, while others sided with Erica, calling Daria a troublemaker and accusing her of disrupting the peace. But it wasn't just the media attention. That was overwhelming. The whispers in the hallways had turned into open hostility. Students who had once avoided the popular crowd now found themselves caught in the crossfire, pressured to choose sides. Teachers had started treating Daria differently too, some offering silent support, others giving her cold stares as though she had committed some unforgivable crime. It all came to a head that afternoon during lunch. Daria sat alone at a table, her mind swirling with the constant barrage of opinions and accusations. The weight of it all was starting to take its toll. She hadn't realized how much pressure she had been under until now. It wasn't just about standing up to Erica anymore. It was about everything that had followed, the way people were treating her now, the expectations placed on her to somehow fix everything. And then there was the news that Erica had escalated the situation. Kayla had sent Daria a text earlier that morning, warning her that Erica had gone to the administration with a revised version of the events. She had painted Daria as the instigator, claiming that Daria had physically attacked her and that the school was in danger of being labeled as a hostile environment because of Daria's actions. Erica had even gone so far as to accuse Daria of provoking the fight in front of the media to gain attention. The message was clear. Erica wasn't just going to let Daria have the last word. She was going to fight back, hard. As Daria walked into the cafeteria, her eyes immediately found Erica and her friends. They were sitting at their usual table, their heads turned in Daria's direction. Erica was talking animatedly, her hands gesturing as she spoke, no doubt telling her side of the story. Her words didn't even have to be heard for Daria to know what was being said. "Did you hear the latest? Daria's a liar. She's trying to make us all look bad," one of Erica's friends, Megan, said loudly, her voice carrying across the room. "She doesn't belong here." The taunts were cruel, but Daria had grown accustomed to them. The difference now was that it wasn't just a few students talking behind her back. It was Erica, manipulating the narrative in a way that could damage her reputation for good. Daria felt her heart rate pick up, but she kept her head high as she made her way to the counter to grab her lunch. She could feel eyes on her, but she refused to let it affect her. The truth was on her side, and no matter how much Erica tried to twist it, Daria wasn't going to back down. It was after lunch that Daria found herself face to face with the consequences of her actions. The school administration had called her in again. This time, it was to address the growing media attention. Daria wasn't surprised. She knew the school had been trying to downplay the situation, hoping it would blow over. But it hadn't. The tension between her and Erica had reached a breaking point, and now the administration was stuck in the middle, caught between appeasing Erica's wealthy family and trying to maintain the illusion of a peaceful, orderly school. When Daria walked into Principal Walter's office, she was greeted by him and two other figures, a woman she didn't recognize and the school's head counselor, Mrs. Jennings. They all looked at her with a mixture of concern and caution, as though they were unsure of how to proceed. "Daria," Mr. Walters began, his tone unusually calm, "I'm sure you know why we've asked you here today. The situation with Erica has escalated. There's been some concern about the way things have been handled, especially with the media getting involved." Daria crossed her arms, standing tall. "I'm not backing down, Mr. Walters. The truth is out there. I didn't create this situation. I'm just trying to stand up for what's right." Mrs. Jennings spoke up, her voice soft but firm. "Daria, we know what happened, and we understand your side of the story. But we also have to consider the bigger picture. Erica's family is influential, and they've made it clear they expect action to be taken. The media coverage has put the school in a difficult position." Daria clenched her jaw. "So, you're saying you're going to protect Erica just because of her family's status? You've seen the proof, you've heard what happened, but you're still willing to let her get away with this?" Mr. Walters sighed, his face tense. "It's not that simple. We can't ignore the reputation of the school, the parents, or the community. You've made a name for yourself in the media, and now the school is under scrutiny. We don't want to escalate things further." Daria's chest tightened as the full weight of what was happening hit her. They weren't here to protect her. They were here to figure out how to suppress the truth. They were more concerned with keeping their hands clean than doing what was right. "This isn't just about keeping the school's reputation intact," Daria said, her voice unwavering. "This is about what's been happening to me and to other students for years. You can't keep ignoring it." Mrs. Jennings looked at her with sympathy, but Daria could tell that even she was trapped in the system. The counselor was on Daria's side, but the power of the administration was overwhelming. They were playing their hand in this game, and Daria was just a piece they were willing to sacrifice to protect their own interests. "You've got to understand, Daria," Mr. Walters said, his voice lowering. "The pressure on us is immense. We can't afford another scandal." "You're already in one," Daria shot back, "and you're not going to get out of it by pretending this isn't happening. I'm not going to let you silence me." Mr. Walters opened his mouth to respond, but Daria didn't wait. She turned on her heel and walked out of the office, her heart racing. By the time Daria reached her locker, she could feel the weight of what had just happened. The school wasn't on her side. They never had been. But this wasn't about the school anymore. It was about the truth. And she wasn't going to let anyone, not Erica, not the administration, take that from her. As she walked out into the parking lot, she heard someone call her name. Turning around, she saw Kayla running toward her. "You're not going to let them win, are you?" Kayla asked, concern etched in her face. Daria smiled faintly. "No, I'm not. The system may be fighting back, but Daria's resolve is stronger than ever. With the administration's complicity and Erica's escalating tactics, the stakes have never been higher. Daria knows the fight is far from over, but the real challenge is yet to come. Can she expose the truth and break through the walls of power, or will the system succeed in silencing her? Full Chapter 10. The next day, Daria walked into the school with a sense of purpose that had been growing steadily inside her over the past few days. The meeting with the administration had confirmed what she already knew. The system was broken, and the people who had the power to fix it were too scared to act. They had made it clear that their priority wasn't justice, but maintaining their status quo. But Daria wasn't going to let them get away with it. She was done waiting. The halls seemed quieter today, as if everyone was holding their breath, unsure of what would happen next. Daria could feel the weight of the stairs following her every move. It wasn't just the students anymore, it was the teachers too. They were all watching her, as if waiting for her to make the first move. Erica's absence from the school that morning spoke volumes. Daria had no doubt that Erica was biding her time, plotting her next move. The question was, how much longer? Could she keep this up? How far was Erica willing to go to maintain control? The tension in the cafeteria was palpable as Daria entered, her gaze sweeping across the room. Most of the students were divided into their usual groups, but there was an undercurrent of unease in the air. The normal chatter was replaced by hushed voices and sidelong glances. Daria wasn't just the girl who had stood up to Erica anymore. She was the girl who had made waves, the girl who had challenged the system, and now the school was divided. As she made her way to the back of the room, she noticed a few familiar faces looking her way. Some students were supportive, offering small smiles or nods. Others, who had been neutral before, now seemed to avoid her altogether, like they feared being associated with her. It wasn't just the popular kids anymore, it was everyone. The line had been drawn, and Daria was on the side of resistance. She sat down at her usual spot, but her appetite was the last thing on her mind. The weight of the situation was starting to sink in. She had made her stand, but what did that really mean? She had exposed the cracks in the system, but now Erica was taking her retaliation to a new level. After lunch, Daria was walking to her next class when she felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched. She turned around and spotted Erica standing at the far end of the hallway, surrounded by her usual group of followers. This time, however, Erica wasn't wearing her usual smug expression. There was something different in her eyes, something desperate. The group was talking in low voices, and Daria could see the way they were looking at her, almost as if they were waiting for something to happen. Daria knew she couldn't avoid this forever. It was time to face Erica, to put an end to the games. She made her way over to Erica, her feet moving with purpose, her heart steady. As she approached, Erica's followers stepped aside, their eyes flickering with a mix of curiosity and fear. This wasn't the first time Daria had confronted Erica, but this time felt different. This time, Daria wasn't afraid. She wasn't afraid of Erica or of the consequences. She was done being quiet. "You think you've won, don't you?" Erica's voice was colder than before, and Daria could feel the venom in her words. "You think you're the hero, but you're nothing. You're just a little girl who thinks she can take me down." Daria took a deep breath, her voice calm but firm. "I'm not trying to take you down, Erica. I'm just trying to make sure this school stops pretending like nothing's wrong." Erica's expression faltered for a moment, the anger in her eyes warring with something else, something that Daria recognized. It was fear. Erica was scared, and she was losing control. "You've made a mistake, Daria," Erica said, her voice shaking with rage. "You've made a big mistake. You don't know who you're messing with." Daria stood tall, meeting Erica's gaze without hesitation. "I'm not afraid of you, Erica. You've been bullying people for years, and I'm the one who's finally standing up to you. The only mistake I've made is not doing it sooner." Erica took a step forward, her face inches from Daria's. "You have no idea what you've done. You've made yourself a target, and I won't stop until I've destroyed you." For the first time, Daria could see the raw, unfiltered anger in Erica's eyes. She was cornered now, and her desperation was clear. But Daria didn't flinch. She stood her ground, knowing that this fight wasn't just between her and Erica anymore. This was about the system that allowed people like Erica to thrive. And Daria wasn't backing down. "You can keep trying to intimidate me, Erica," Daria said quietly, "but it's not going to work anymore. You can't bully your way out of this. You're not the one in control." Erica's eyes flashed with fury, and for a moment it seemed like she was about to lunge at Daria. But then something in her broke. The fight drained out of her, and she turned away, her shoulders slumped. Without a word, she walked off, her followers trailing behind her. Daria stood there, her chest rising and falling with the weight of the confrontation. It wasn't over. Yet she knew that. But for the first time she felt like she was winning. Erica's power had faltered, and that was just the beginning. Later that day, as Daria sat in her last class, she couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was about to happen. She had exposed the truth, but the fight had only just begun. She had seen the fear in Erica's eyes, but that didn't mean the battle was over. Erica wouldn't give up easily, and Daria had made an enemy of the entire system. As the bell rang, signaling the end of the day, Daria gathered her things slowly. The hallway outside was filled with students, but today it felt different. The air was heavy with tension, but there was something else now too. Something that felt like change. The atmosphere in the school had shifted, and Daria was at the center of it. She didn't know what would happen next, but she did know one thing. She was ready for whatever came her way. Daria has finally confronted Erica, but the battle for justice is far from over. With Erica's power slipping and the school system starting to fracture, Daria faces the hardest decision of her life. How far is she willing to push in order to expose the truth? The stakes have never been higher, and the consequences of her actions are just beginning to unfold. Full Chapter 11. The weight of the past few days had begun to settle heavily on Daria's shoulders. Everywhere she turned, the school seemed to be watching her, some with admiration, others with fear. But the ones who watched with fear, the ones who were scared of what she might do next, were growing in number. And Erica? She hadn't stopped. Daria had expected as much, but the intensity of Erica's retaliation was starting to become overwhelming. This time, Erica wasn't just using her usual tactics. She wasn't just making rumors or playing games in the background. No, she was pulling out all the stops. Daria knew it was only a matter of time before things got really ugly. That afternoon, as Daria walked down the hallway after her last class, she spotted one of Erica's followers, Sarah, standing near the lockers with a couple of others. They were talking in low voices, but as soon as Daria walked by, Sarah called out to her, "You've made your bed, Daria. Now you're going to lie in it." Sarah sneered, her eyes cold as she glanced over at the others. Daria stopped in her tracks and turned to face her. "What's that supposed to mean?" Sarah laughed, a hollow, mocking sound. "You've got the whole school talking about you, don't you? It's all over the place. They're calling you a troublemaker. And now it's not just the students. Even the teachers are starting to get involved. You've made yourself a target. You really thought this would be easy." Daria's heart beat faster, but she didn't show it. She wasn't going to let Sarah get under her skin. "If standing up for what's right makes me a troublemaker, then I guess I'll wear that title proudly." Sarah's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Oh, I'm sure you're all proud of yourself, but don't say I didn't warn you when things start to fall apart. Erica's not going to stop, and neither is the school. You'll see. You're just digging your own grave." With that, Sarah and her friends walked away, leaving Daria standing alone in the hallway. The words stung, but Daria knew she couldn't back down. Erica wasn't going to stop, and neither would she. Daria's resolve only hardened as she made her way to her locker. It wasn't just the students now. It wasn't just the rumors or the whispers. The administration was starting to feel the pressure, and Daria could tell that things were about to get even worse. But she wasn't afraid. She had made her choice, and now the only thing left was to expose the truth. All of it. That evening, Daria sat at her desk, reviewing the notes she had gathered. She had all the evidence she needed, statements from students, recordings of incidents, and even emails she had received from anonymous sources inside the school. It was time to take the next step. It was time to make sure that the truth was heard, no matter what. Daria had already contacted the same news outlet that had picked up her story earlier. She had gathered the courage to send them everything. All the proof of the bullying, the systemic favoritism, and the cover-ups. She couldn't keep waiting for the school to do the right thing. The time had come to make sure everyone knew exactly what was happening behind the scenes. As she typed the email, her hands shook slightly, but her mind was clear. She knew what she had to do. This wasn't just about Erica anymore. It was about the entire system that had allowed Erica's behavior to go unpunished for so long. It was about breaking down the walls that had protected people like Erica, people who thought they could get away with anything. After a few moments, Daria clicked send. The email was out there now. There was no turning back. The next day at school, Daria arrived to find the tension thicker than ever. The walls seemed to close in around her, and as she walked through the halls, she could hear the whispers following her. But today, something felt different. There was a buzz in the air, a sense of anticipation. It wasn't just about the usual rumors anymore. It was about the storm that Daria had started, and now it was gaining momentum. She reached her locker to find a new message taped to it. This one was from an anonymous source. "It's time. The truth will be out soon. You're not alone." Daria's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just the students anymore. Someone else was watching. Someone else had been paying attention. She took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. The news was coming, and everything she had done was about to come to light. Later that afternoon, just as the school day was ending, Daria received a call. It was from the reporter she had spoken to earlier. "Daria, we've received your information," the reporter said, her voice urgent. "We're going to run the story tonight. The investigation is already underway. But there's something you need to know. Erica's family is pulling strings. They've been making calls to the school. trying to shut this down before it can even get started. Daria's stomach dropped. She had known that Erica's family had influence, but now it was clear how far they were willing to go to protect her. "You need to be careful," the reporter continued. "They're going to come after you. They'll try to discredit you. But the truth is out now, and we are not backing down." Daria's grip on the phone tightened. "I'm ready. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about exposing what's been going on for years." The reporter was silent for a moment before speaking again. "I hope you're ready for the fallout, Daria. This is going to get big. And it's not just about Erica anymore. You've opened a door, and once it's open, there's no closing it." The following morning, Daria could barely focus on her classes. The air was thick with anticipation. She could feel the eyes on her, could sense the whispers in the halls growing louder. But this time they were different. They weren't just whispers of fear. They were whispers of curiosity, of uncertainty. People were starting to wonder if they had been wrong about her. At lunch, Daria sat alone, her thoughts heavy with what was coming next. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had been silenced, everyone who had been ignored, everyone who had been afraid to stand up. She could hear the chatter in the cafeteria. The story was spreading, and soon the whole school would know the truth. That evening, the news outlet aired the story. Daria's face flashed on the screen. Her words about the bullying, the racism, and the cover-ups echoed in the report. For the first time, the world was hearing her side of the story. But as the story aired, Daria couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. Erica's retaliation had been brutal, and now the system was beginning to fight back. The media attention was just the beginning. The real battle had just begun. With the truth now exposed to the public, Daria faces the full force of Erica's family and the school's administration. The fight has moved beyond the walls of the school and into the media. But Daria knows that the real consequences of her actions are yet to unfold. Can she survive the backlash and hold on to the truth, or will the system crush her in the end? Full Chapter 12. The days after Daria's story aired were the most surreal of her life. The attention was overwhelming, both positive and negative. The school's reputation was on the line, and Daria had unwittingly become the center of a storm. The media continued to pick up the story, and her name was everywhere. She had exposed the system, but now the system was pushing back harder than she ever imagined. Daria knew Erica's family wouldn't let this go. They were wealthy, influential, and used to getting what they wanted. The calls to the administration had become more frequent, more aggressive. The pressure on Daria was intensifying, and every day felt like she was walking a tightrope. That afternoon, as Daria walked into the school, she could feel the weight of the stairs. The hallway felt narrower, more suffocating than ever. She was used to being watched, but today the eyes on her were filled with judgment. Some students who had previously supported her now seemed distant, unsure of where they stood. Others had turned on her completely, choosing to align with Erica and her powerful family. The whispers had only grown louder. "Have you seen what she did to Erica? She's a troublemaker, trying to ruin everything. She's out of her league. She should have stayed quiet." Daria kept her head high, though her heart pounded in her chest. She wasn't going to let the whispers break her. She had come too far. The truth was out, and she had exposed what needed to be exposed. But that didn't mean the fight was over. "You said." Bell rang, signaling the beginning of the first period, and Daria made her way to her class. She had barely made it halfway down the hall when she saw him. Principal Walters, standing outside the office, his expression tense. He motioned for her to come over, and Daria's stomach sank. She knew what was coming. "Daria, we need to talk," Mr. Walters said, his voice low but firm. "There's been a lot of pressure from Erica's family. They've made it clear. That they expect us to take action. They've been in contact with the district, and they're demanding something be done. Daria felt her chest tighten. She had expected this, but hearing it from Mr. Walters made it feel real. Too real. She had become a pawn in a game much bigger than herself. "I'm not going to back down," Daria said, her voice steady despite the nerves inside her. "I'm not going to let them silence me." Mr. Walters sighed, his face etched with frustration. "I'm not asking you to back down, Daria, but you have to understand that we are in a difficult position. Erica's family is well connected. They have resources, and if we don't handle this carefully, it could destroy the reputation of this school. The district is watching, and they've already made it clear that they want this situation resolved." Daria clenched her jaw. "You mean they want me to back down? They want me to stop fighting for what's right?" Mr. Walters shook his head. "It's not that simple. We can't afford to let this escalate any further. You need to understand that. There are consequences to everything you've done. This isn't just about you anymore." "I don't care about the school's reputation," Daria said, her voice rising slightly. "I care about what's right. Erica's been bullying people for years, and you've all done nothing. You've protected her, allowed her to hurt others. I'm not the one who's caused this mess. She has." The principal's face darkened, and for a moment Daria thought he was going to reprimand her. But he didn't. He just stared at her, his eyes weary. "I'm not your enemy, Daria," he said softly, "but you need to understand that the pressure we're facing is immense. The board has already threatened action if things don't settle down. The media is only making it worse." Daria stood there, staring at him for a long moment. She could feel the weight of his words, but the anger in her chest only grew. "If you think I'm going to back down, you're wrong. I'm not afraid of Erica or her family. And I'm not afraid of you." That evening, Daria sat in her room, staring at the wall. She hadn't expected to feel so alone. It wasn't just Erica's family and the school trying to push her into submission. It was the feeling of being trapped between two worlds. The one that had always been comfortable, where she kept her head down and tried to blend in, and the one she'd just stepped into, where everything was at risk. The phone buzzed on her desk, interrupting her thoughts. She picked it up, her heart skipping when she saw the message from Kayla. "We need to talk. Meet me after school tomorrow. It's serious." Daria's pulse quickened. She had a feeling this was going to be a turning point. She'd been preparing herself for the worst, but whatever Kayla had to say, she knew it was going to change everything. The next day, as Daria met Kayla in the park after school, she could feel the tension between them. Kayla was normally calm, always able to keep things in perspective, but today her face was pale, her eyes filled with concern. "What's going on?" Daria asked, her voice low. Kayla took a deep breath before speaking. "I've been hearing things. Erica's family's pushing harder now. The district is threatening to suspend or expel you if you don't stop fighting. They're saying you're causing unnecessary disruption to the school, and they're going to pull all the support if you don't comply." Daria's stomach dropped. "They can't do that. They're trying to. They want you to back down, Daria. They want you to stop, and they're using everything they have to make it happen." Daria's mind raced. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for, the moment when everything would be on the line. "I can't stop now," Daria said, her voice filled with resolve. "I've come too far. I'm not backing down. I won't let them silence me." Kayla looked at her for a long moment, her expression serious. "I know, but there are consequences, and they're coming. You need to be prepared for what's next. This fight isn't just about you anymore. It's about everyone who's been too afraid to stand up." Daria nodded, her heart heavy. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she wasn't afraid of the consequences anymore. She had chosen her path, and there was no turning back. The following week was a blur. The pressure from Erica's family and the school board mounted, and Daria could feel it closing in. The final showdown was coming, and Daria knew that no matter what happened, she had to be ready. She had already exposed the truth. Now, all that was left was to make sure the world knew it. Daria had done everything she could to fight back against the system, but the question remained, how far was she willing to go, and what would the cost be? Daria has reached the breaking point. With the pressure mounting from every direction, she faces the hardest decision of her life. How far will she go to fight for what's right, and how much is she willing to sacrifice? The battle for justice has reached its final stages, but the consequences of her actions are just beginning. Full Chapter 13. Daria sat in the principal's office, feeling the weight of the silence press down on her. The room seemed to close in around her as Principal Walters sat across from her, his hands folded in front of him. His expression was unreadable, but Daria could see the tension in his eyes. He had been a silent observer throughout much of this, but now it seemed as if he was forced to take action. "You're aware of the gravity of this situation, Daria," he said, his voice cold, but with an edge of something else. Perhaps frustration, perhaps fear. "You've made quite an impact with your actions. The school board is considering disciplinary measures, and the district has already begun an investigation into the situation. You've made things difficult." Daria didn't flinch. "I didn't make things difficult. Erica and the system that protected her did. I'm just trying to make sure the truth is heard." Principal Walter's eyes flickered with something that resembled guilt, but he quickly masked it with a stern expression. "You've exposed a lot, Daria, but you've also caused a great deal of unrest. We're talking about a significant backlash here. Parents are angry. The community is divided. And the media, well, they've fueled the fire." Daria's pulse quickened. "So you're saying I should just back down? Let Erica and her family win? Let the system keep protecting people like her?" Walters leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering. "What I'm saying is that you need to think about the consequences of your actions. You're not just fighting Erica anymore. You're fighting the entire system. And you're putting yourself at risk. Are you ready for that?" Daria's eyes narrowed, her breath steady as she stared at him. "I'm not going to stop fighting for what's right. I've made my choice." The silence between them stretched out, thick with unspoken words. Daria could feel the weight of the decision that lay before her. This wasn't just about Erica or the school. It was about standing up for everyone who had been silenced, everyone who had been hurt. But with that came consequences. She knew that now more than ever. The rest of the day passed in a haze of uncertainty. The pressure from the administration was starting to show. Students whispered in the halls, unsure of what was coming next. Some were still supportive, but many had begun to waver. The fight Daria had started was no longer just about her. It was about the system, and the system was pushing back hard. By the time school ended, Daria's mind was spinning. She needed to talk to Kayla. She needed to figure out what to do next, because the situation had escalated faster than she ever anticipated. She wasn't afraid of the consequences. She had already prepared herself for that. But there was something she hadn't considered. How much longer could she keep fighting before it all fell apart? As Daria walked to their usual meeting spot under the oak tree, her heart was heavy. She was running out of time. Erica and her family were pushing every button they could, using every bit of influence they had to shut her down. And the administration? They were caught between trying to protect their reputation and appeasing Erica's family. Kayla was already waiting for her when Daria arrived. The look on her face said it all. The weight of the situation had caught up to both of them. "Hey," Kayla said softly, her voice laced with concern. "I'm sorry to say this, but things are getting worse. The administration's on edge. The district's investigation is escalating, and there's talk of you being suspended. They're really pushing this." Daria nodded, her mind racing. I know. I just had a meeting with Mr. Walters. He's pressuring me to back down. He says the media and the school board are demanding action. But I can't stop. I can't just let them silence me. Kayla's eyes softened. I know you're doing the right thing, Daria, but are you prepared for what's coming next? Because it's not just about Erica anymore. It's about the whole system. The people who've been hiding behind that system are scared, and they're coming for you. Daria took a deep breath, the weight of Kayla's words sinking in. I've already exposed the truth. I'm not going to let them win. Not now. Not after everything. Kayla placed a hand on her shoulder, her gaze unwavering. I'm with you. We're all with you, but this battle's going to get harder before it gets better. We need to be ready for whatever comes next. Daria looked at Kayla, her heart heavy but resolute. I've been ready for a long time. The following week, things took a turn. Daria found herself summoned to the office again, this time with more than just Principal Walters waiting for her. Mrs. Jennings, the school counselor, was sitting next to him, her face pale with concern. The weight of what was happening was clear. This wasn't a simple meeting. This was the final showdown. Daria, Mr. Walters began, his voice tight. The situation has escalated beyond what we anticipated. The district is considering disciplinary action. They've been in contact with Erica's family, and the pressure from the community is intense. We need to resolve this. Daria felt her stomach twist. This was it, the moment she'd been preparing for. She had seen the writing on the wall, but hearing it from them felt different. She could feel the walls closing in. Are you asking me to stop? Daria asked, her voice steady but with an edge. Are you telling me that everything I've done, everything I've fought for, was for nothing? Mrs. Jennings spoke up then, her voice gentle but firm. Daria, we understand your frustration. We understand why you did what you did. But you need to know that the repercussions are serious. You're not just fighting one bully anymore. You're fighting an entire system that has a lot of power. Are you prepared for that? Daria looked between them, her mind racing. She wasn't sure if they were asking her to back down or if they were just trying to warn her. But one thing was clear. They were trying to make her feel small again. They were trying to intimidate her into quitting. I'm not backing down, Daria said, her voice unwavering. I've already made my choice. You can't silence the truth. You can't erase what's happened. The room was silent for a moment before Mr. Walters spoke again, his tone more serious now. We're not asking you to back down, Daria, but the situation is at a tipping point. If this continues, there's a chance it will lead to more drastic consequences. The district is not going to let this slide. Daria's heart pounded, but she stood tall. Then let it happen. I'll face the consequences, but I'm not going to stop fighting for what's right. After the meeting, Daria walked out of the office feeling like she had just been through a storm. She knew what was coming next. The system was going to fight back with everything it had. But she was ready. The truth was out, and no matter how much they tried to bury it, she wasn't going to let them. She met Kayla later that afternoon, the weight of their conversation still heavy in her chest. They're really pushing it now, Daria said, her voice quiet but resolute. But I'm not backing down, Kayla nodded, a determined look on her face. Neither are we. We've got your back, Daria. Always. With the district's investigation intensifying, Daria faces the full force of the school system trying to shut her down. The pressure is mounting, but she refuses to back down. As the final battle draws near, Daria will have to decide just how far she is willing to go to expose the truth and how much she is willing to sacrifice to make sure it is heard. Full Chapter 14. The final decision was made in the dead of night, a few days after Daria's last meeting with the administration. The tension had been suffocating, the pressure unbearable. Every conversation she had overheard, every glance, every whisper was a reminder of how much was at stake. Daria had pushed the system to its breaking point, but in doing so, she had pushed herself to the edge. The investigation was moving forward, and the district had already signaled that consequences were coming. There were murmurs of suspension, of expulsion, and worse, rumors of a permanent record that would follow her for the rest of her life. The whispers in the hallways had become louder, more certain. The school was trying to distance itself from the mess Daria had created. But Daria wasn't backing down. She had come too far. The truth had to be heard, no matter the cost. It was the morning of the school board meeting. Daria knew this would be the final stand, the moment when everything would be decided. She had spent the past few days preparing for it, gathering her evidence, her thoughts, and the final pieces of her argument. She had gone public, exposed the corruption, and forced the truth into the light. Now it was time for the board to hear it. Kayla met her outside the school, her expression serious. Daria could tell her friend was nervous, but there was a sense of resolve in her eyes. They both knew what was at stake. "I'm with you, no matter what," Kayla said quietly, her voice laced with determination. "I know," Daria replied, taking a deep breath. "But today it's all or nothing. I've pushed this far, and I'm not going to stop now." Kayla nodded, her eyes fierce. "You've already changed everything, Daria. No matter what happens, you've made a difference." Inside the school board meeting room, the atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. Daria sat at the front, facing the panel of board members and administrators who had the power to decide her fate. They sat in their polished suits, their expressions stoic, their eyes focused on her like predators waiting to pounce. Erica's family was present too, sitting in the front row, their eyes fixed on Daria with a mixture of contempt and disbelief. Daria could feel the weight of their stares, but she refused to let it shake her. She had made it this far, and she wasn't going to let them intimidate her now. The board chairman, a tall man with a graying beard, opened the meeting with a formal introduction. But Daria wasn't listening to the pleasantries. She was focused on the task at hand. The truth needed to be told, and nothing was going to stop her. When it was finally her turn to speak, Daria stood up, her heart racing, her breath steady. She looked around the room, at the board members who had the power to change everything, at the students and parents in the back who were watching. She had the truth on her side, and she was going to make sure they heard it. "Thank you for allowing me to speak," Daria began, her voice calm and clear. "I stand here today not just for myself, but for every student who has been silenced, for every person who has been bullied, for every person who has been told they don't matter. I stand here for the truth, and I will not back down." She paused, letting the words sink in. What has happened here, what happened with Erica, what has been happening in this school for years, is not an isolated incident. It's a pattern of favoritism, of discrimination, and of a system that protects those in power while ignoring the students who need help the most. She turned to face Erica's family, her eyes unwavering. Erica's behavior is not an accident. It's a reflection of the power structures in place that allow people like her to get away with whatever they want. For years, Erica has used her influence to bully others, to manipulate situations, and to avoid the consequences of her actions. And the school has allowed it to happen. The room was silent as Daria spoke, but she could feel the tension growing. The board members shifted in their seats, some of them looking at each other with uncertainty. "I am not here to ask for forgiveness," Daria continued. "I'm here to demand justice. I've already shown the proof, the witness statements, the recordings, the messages, and I stand by every word I've said. The truth cannot be silenced. The people who have been hurt cannot be ignored." Daria took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words settle in. This is not just about Erica. This is about a system that has allowed her behavior to continue unchecked. This is about a school that values reputation over the well-being of its students. And this is about me, a student who has had enough of being treated as less than. I will not apologize for standing up for what's right. As Daria finished her statement, she stood tall, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was silent, but it was a different kind of silence. It wasn't the silence of uncertainty. It was the silence of realization. The truth had been spoken, and there was no taking it back. The board members looked at each other, their faces unreadable. For a moment, Daria thought they might dismiss her, brush her aside, like they had done with so many others before. But then the chairman spoke. "Thank you, Daria," he said, his voice calm, but with a hint of something else. "We will take your statements into consideration. We will review the evidence, and we will make our decision." The days that followed were filled with an unbearable tension. Daria waited in the quiet of her room, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She had exposed the truth, but what would the cost be? Would the board stand with her, or would they choose to protect the system that had allowed Erica to thrive? And then, one evening, Daria received the letter. It was from the school district, and her hands shook as she opened it. The letter was short, but the message was clear. After a thorough review of the situation, and in light of the overwhelming evidence provided, the school district has decided to take disciplinary action against Erica and her family. Effective immediately, Erica will be suspended pending further investigation. The school will also implement a comprehensive review of its policies to ensure that this kind of behavior is not allowed to continue. Daria let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The system hadn't won. For the first time, the truth had prevailed. Daria's fight had come at a cost. She had risked everything: her reputation, her future, her peace of mind. But in the end, the truth had won, and the school had been forced to confront the issues that had been allowed to fester for so long. As Daria stood in front of the school the next day, watching the students who had once looked at her with fear now look at her with respect, she knew that this was only the beginning. The fight for justice wasn't over, but for the first time, she felt like she had made a difference. Daria's victory is hard-earned, but the fight for justice is never truly over. The system may have cracked, but it hasn't been completely dismantled. As Daria continues her journey, she realizes that real change requires more than just one battle. It requires persistence, courage, and a willingness to keep fighting no matter what.